Hi, welcome back to another episode of SEO on Air. I'm your host Aaron, and today we have Jesse Perreault, CEO and partner of Soap Media. We talk about how to build a solid foundation for your online presence, how to leverage Google Ads to generate leads, and the tactics you use to improve and optimize conversion rate. I hope you enjoy this episode.
And how did you kind of come across Soap Media? Was that something that started early on as well, or did you kind of grow into that too?
Yeah, so that's a long story, but the short of it, I guess, is that was probably something like 9, 10 years ago. I started working for a digital marketing agency that was not Soap Media as an account manager. I managed a bunch of their clientele. And at that time, I had started dating my now wife, and her father ran Soap Media. So um, her father, Ed, which is now my business partner in Soap Media, knew I was working for another agency, but due to conflict of interest, I couldn't really talk much about the line of work, what I was doing, due to conflict of interest. And I think he always wanted me to come be a part of his agency as he saw me kind of growing this other agency. Eventually, he brought me in as a director of business development to grow the company, which I did for quite a while. I did leave for about almost a 2-year period to be a VP of marketing and run the marketing department at a fintech company. And then he wanted me back as a partner, and he offered me ownership in the company. And that was 3.5, 4 years ago at this point, I think. So
And it's been smooth sailing ever since.
yeah. Well, as smooth as it can be, I guess, right?
Okay, so one question I think to kind of start off this round of questioning would be what kind of businesses does Soap Media kind of usually deal with?
Yeah, so our clients are quite diverse, their backgrounds. So the industry can be anything from, trades like paving, flooring companies, B2B software, animal removal, psychotherapists. So we didn't niche. We decided not to niche as an agency. And I would say most of our clients are usually a couple employees to 100 employees. We don't work with enterprise. It's typically small, medium businesses. So, we've taken companies from $500,000 a year revenue to $10 million a year revenue in the course of a couple of years. That's typically the size of the clients that we like to work with.
All right, so for hypothetical reasons, I am the owner of a plumbing agency called the Plumbing Brothers. Me and my brother Luigi are trying to get this thing started off. We have an idea of SEO. We don't really know much about it. What we do have is knowledge in gaming. So could you, let's say, break down an SEO strategy with a little bit of gaming advice? At least show
Yeah,
how you can make an SEO strategy with some gaming relation to it.
I think the first thing with that would be to understand your current level of SEO, and then to use the analogy of gaming to amplify that further. So I would say that a good analogy with SEO is for setting expectations, because SEO is not an overnight process. One of the first things I would say, because we're always in it for the long term with our clients and we want to manage expectations, is that say something along the lines of some of the best video games that you've played. I'm sure you didn't beat them in a couple hours, right? So I would use an analogy like that regarding some of the longer term games that you're really invested into. It paid off in the end because it took time, took the effort, and in the end, even though you may be wanting it in an hour or two, you got it many days later in the gaming world, let's say, but in the world of SEO, many months or even years later. So I'd use an analogy like that just to start off with expectations management before we go further.
Right. And to, let's say, take the second step from there, how do I, let's say, start off my SEO strategy?
How do you start off the SEO strategy?
Right. Like at least more of the basic side of it.
In a gaming analogy, how to start off the SEO strategy? I mean, I would say, where do you want, depending on what kind of game it is, let's say it's an MMO, where do you want your character to be? In regards to, where do you want your website to be? Where do you want it to rank? And then from there, I would tailor, the best route, the best path. Many games have multiple paths in them, and you have to choose the path. So it's not always about the path of least resistance either. It could be, a more challenging path. But that once you overcome those challenges, we can get them to where they need to be, which is an end result, which could be hitting level 100 or game completion.
Right. So in this, let's say, analogy that we are using, what if I come across a level boss and I am kind of struggling to beat that boss? And for kind of to give more context to it, let's say that boss is an algorithm update. So how exactly can I level up to beat that?
Yeah, I think in a client's example, I would say in most boss fights, in most games, you're typically going to be working with multiple people, depending on the genre of game, but you're going to be working with multiple people to beat the boss. Whether you call that a dungeon or whatever you may want to call it, depending on what game you're playing. So in that case, I would say lean on us and rely on our team. That might be a slightly higher level than you in our line of work. I always tell our clients too, I don't know the first place to fix the plumbing in a house, but I know how to, let's say, beat that boss in the world of SEO. So I would advise them to strictly lean on our team, our expertise, as we've likely seen that path and that boss fight before, where our clients usually don't see the boss fight. They don't even know that algorithm update has come out in most cases.
Is there a way we can have AI help us out when it comes to an SEO strategy?
Yeah, I think, when you play a video game and, there's a goal or outcome that you're trying to accomplish, there's so many different ways to do it. And I always try to do it as efficiently as possible. And I feel that I've played games where my friend's level 5 and I'm level 10, and we both put the same amount of time in. So in those cases where I'm level 10, I think AI sometimes is the difference now, in that there's a tremendous efficiency gain in the work we do. I don't think AI has replaced a lot. I also think people are tired of faceless companies. But example's sake, if you leverage AI for content, I don't feel like the raw output is what you want to post. We'll use AI sometimes, copy AI will use the ChatGPT framework, for instance. So if we use that and then we take the output, but then we go through a vetting process, that just speeds things up. We're not taking the AI output exactly. We have very controlled inputs. We get an output, and then our team will take that and modify the written content to make it more of the client's voice. The point of all of that is that that's an efficiency gain. So we can leverage AI in ways to give more to our clients, which allows them to essentially get to that level 10 in the same amount of time it would take them to get to level 5 in the past.
With your experience with AI, how accurate do you feel some of the information is?
Yeah, I think, in most cases, I would say it's probably 80 to 90%. I've also seen that, it depends who you ask and what the sample size of the data is. We have our own experience with it. I would say our experience has been 80 to 90%, but we always vet the information. Like I said, we make changes. We don't just take the raw output, because we've found that not to be, the best result. So you're probably looking at about 80, 90% in most cases. Sometimes it's worse than others. Sometimes it's better than others, but that would be the average.
Do you feel like AI can usually help out with content mainly, or does it have some place in marketing and in, let's say, SEO?
Yeah, I think AI, I think its applications are endless almost, even outside of digital marketing. But for digital marketing, I could see that a lot of, on the pay-per-click side of things, on paid advertising, a lot of the formula-based changes, to determine bid adjustments and all of that, a lot can be driven by AI, because a lot of it's calculation of taking the data that exists from spending ad dollars, and determining, okay, apply a 6.5% bid adjustment to desktop because of all this data. I do believe AI is capable of that. I think having AI really take the full control of everything and manage it as well as our team would, I don't think it's there, but I could see AI assisting on that front. I can see AI helping in a lot of ways in regards to SEO, whether that be content, producing metadata that might be quite effective and getting different options, or at least a starting point. I do believe that in our line of work, AI is not perfect. Humans are not perfect either. There's human error and there's software error. But to get any degree of definitive thinking, you need to merge those two. And if you do that successfully, I think that's where you win. Who knows what AI will be in 5-10 years, but as of right now, it's not taking over what we do. It's really a merger of the human element with AI.
Using StarCraft, let's say, analogy, how do you build a strong foundation regarding SEO?
Yeah, so when you think of StarCraft, I think it's Toby, the CEO of Shopify. He's referenced StarCraft so many times as a game that he learned more from than a lot of business courses or something along those lines. And it's super true. It's a game I loved. And one of the things that StarCraft, the concept that I think I really push is the concept of micro and macro. In the game of StarCraft, you're attacking someone's base while simultaneously managing your economy of your base. So there's, an attacking, you're managing that, and you're multitasking, but you have to do it as effectively as possible. Whether it be in like business, like I'll give you an example, and I can address the SEO component, but in our business, we would do a lot in sales, and then we basically have to stop sales to focus on onboarding. And there's a major efficiency loss in between us doing that. And we've realized this for a long time. So what I would advise any company is, as you scale, to address that, to make sure you're hiring at the same capacity as you're selling. Now we're selling, we're onboarding, we're trying to avoid the pause. We're working on R&D, we're building our own tools. It's the same thing with SEO and your website and your landing pages. You want to be, they're living, breathing things. At least that's what a lot of our developers say, they're living, breathing things. So you don't want to just build it and leave it. You always have to strive to do better. You always have to look in the game of StarCraft. You're trying to find every single efficiency gain possible to beat the other player. That it's like a game of chess in that sense. So, make sure that, if you're doing backlink generation, you don't just stop your outreach efforts. Make sure you're doing that, and you're working on adding new content that's valuable to your website. You're improving your website user experience, your load times, all of these really important components. So look at every different angle and make sure you're working on all of them. And I always give the analogy of SEO like a puzzle, right? So in a puzzle, naturally, there's a lot of pieces to it. And the company with a more completed puzzle consistently typically wins Google. So make sure you're putting those pieces together and you're not just focused on one, because usually that you're not going to win Google and if you just focus on one.
We've now, let's say, got an idea of SEO. We've kind of built a little bit of foundation on our website, and we've taken care of some technical SEO as well. I've got a bit of a budget to kind of spend in PPC. So how can I specifically leverage that to my advantage?
Yeah, I think when it comes to pay-per-click, I find our clients that do the best typically, they use multiple channels. The customer journey for the average user today is usually not just I see an ad, I click, I buy. So whether there's multiple networks inside Google, search, display, video, whatever it may be, we want to leverage as many as possible and in the most strategic manner. So if you look at Mario Brothers, for instance, when you play that game, there's multiple routes and there's hidden routes in those games, and you can there's a lot of different ways. I actually played and beat it with my wife recently, Mario Brothers. So we know there's all the kinds of different paths that you can take and faster routes and such. So I would say that because there's multiple options, that's kind of applicable to paid advertising, and that there's multiple options of doing things. Somebody can come from a Google search ad, but through display remarketing, we convert more that way. I would say when it comes to paid advertising, just not to focus on, once again, don't put everything in one basket. When there's multiple channels, you want to nurture that customer journey of, tofu, mofu, wofu, top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom, awareness, consideration, close. And you can do a lot with paid advertising to effectively do that. They could come organically through SEO, but convert from a paid ad. So
if if you were to say that SEO takes a long time to kind of show results, and you're saying anywhere between 1, 3, 6 months, even a year, I think this might be a stupid question, but how fast can we see PPC results?
I mean, I would say I don't think it's a stupid question at all. I think most of our clients, like at least in our case, I can speak for how we operate in our results. You start with us before we even launch paid advertising. The number one thing to do is to make sure the tracking's set up before any campaigns go live. You have to be able to correlate conversions or leads relative to the source. So, usually within a week and a half, 2 weeks at most, we have all the tracking done, the campaigns done, they go live. So it's, in month one, typically our clients are getting leads from paid advertising, usually month one, depending on the business. It could vary, but month one, you get leads. Month two, you get more leads. 3, you get more and more. Come month 6, there's a tremendous efficiency gain. Your cost per lead is substantially less. And your ad spend, which goes to Google, Meta, LinkedIn, whatever it may be, is working substantially harder for them. So the short of it is technically in month one, you can get leads from paid advertising. It's quite common, but over the months through hundreds, if not thousands of optimizations, those leads become a lot more for the same dollar amount.
And when we're talking about leads here, we're talking about, let's say, just Google ads or just ads in general?
Yeah, I think ads in general. So we do a few things very well. Like we have not touched TikTok ads. There's certain platforms, like we're very specific in what we do. So Google ads, we're very big on, and Meta ads. Those are probably our 2 biggest. We do manage LinkedIn ads for some clients and have had some results, but Google ads and Meta ads are the 2 biggest platforms that we found so far to drive leads. There's all kinds of, there's Reddit ads and TikTok ads, and maybe some people have made those work, but as far as what we've seen, a lot of it has been awareness and less on the lead side, which we just focus on leads and revenue for our clients. So that's just what we focus on so far.
Right. And we kind of spoke a little bit about the Google ad side of it, but let's kind of talk in detail for the Facebook side, or at least Meta ads. How does one kind of start off, and how do we kind of maintain that going so that there's no, let's say, disruptance in our ads?
Yeah, I think with Meta, there's a different element to Meta than Google. There's a social aspect to it first off, right? Where Google, you're not sharing those search ads at the top with your friends. Where Meta, you can actually get the organic exposure of all the social proof is built up on a single creative if you take the post ID. So what I would say with Meta is when you're creating it, to think of that element as well, of leads, but also if you can create something that is has the ability to be shared. If you know somebody in your audience would share it, to try and create the targeting and creative around that. And you can really leverage those aspects of how that platform functions, because we've had clients get more organic exposure from an ad than they did on the ad, just because there's a snowball effect of people constantly sharing it and sharing it and sharing it. Before we know it, there's all this organic exposure. So that's something, if you can do and you can think of in advance before you even get started, I would recommend it. And then, from an objective perspective, we use a lot of different objectives when we create our campaigns, depending on where they're at in the funnel. But I would say Meta does thrive quite well when you use a lead-based conversion objective.
Is there like an average time frame to see results when it comes to Meta ads, or it kind of just depends on how much your budget and scheduling is?
Yeah, I think it does depend on those factors, budget and schedule and all of that. But it's very similar to Google Ads in that, the first month, realistically, we find we're getting leads. In most cases, budget does make a difference. But one thing I'll say with budget too is we don't like clients to go from, let's say, a $2,000 a month ad budget to $20,000 overnight, because the platform's just going to spend it. And so we scale those strategically. But let's say you have depending on your industry, let's say you have $1,000 or $2,000 a month to go to Meta. Usually you're going to get leads in month one on that. If you're not getting them, depending on the industry, if you're selling a $200,000 product or service, it might be a bit more challenging to get a lead. But if you're selling something that's 500 or even $10,000, you're usually going to get leads within that range for that kind of ad spend.
We can take up some Facebook and meta marketing. I kind of gave the, let's say, combative one and said, hey, listen, you decide to do meta ads. I want to do LinkedIn ads. So one question is there a benefit to picking one over the other? And then the next question I'll try to get after that.
So there can be a benefit. For instance, before we work with someone, we'll even look at the details of targeting, the auction. So let's say we look at Google Ads or one of the paid advertising platforms. Let's say you're selling a $5 toothbrush. It's going to cost you $3 a click. It's very hard to make a client money when the click costs are equivalent to what they sell their product or service at. So to the question of is one platform better than the other, in some cases it is. Some cases will say don't do LinkedIn ads because you're B2C, you're selling a product or service at a low price point, low margin, your average order size is quite small. LinkedIn ads is a bit more expensive for your business. It might work for a company that's a B2B software company selling a several $100,000 a year software. That's more LinkedIn, not for you. We looked at Google Ads and we looked at what was going on in Meta. We feel the auction's more lucrative. We feel the targeting's a bit better there. Let's start with those. So we cater it to that client. And this is before they're even a client. This is part of our process at Soap Media is we give these recommendations prior to actually working together.
Okay, so if you kind of heard, let's say, the basics of this plumbing company, which one would you recommend?
So for a plumbing company, I would definitely recommend Meta ads. I mean, we've had a lot of Google and Meta. I think service,
Right.
I wouldn't touch LinkedIn unless you're really trying to go after commercial business. But a lot of our clients, whether it's HVAC, flooring, anything to do with your home, Meta and Google together work really, really well. We generate a lot of leads for companies across Canada with those two platforms.
So then what would be, let's say, LinkedIn specific?
I think LinkedIn specific, a good example would be like the B2B and ERP software for like healthcare. So we have a client that sells an ERP software to the US, to the healthcare system down there. You're talking 6 figures a year as the sale item. For a client like that, or a big ticket item, I would say it could be 10,000 plus, but I'd say 50,000 plus ideally. We find LinkedIn's much more justified because this is a bit more of an expensive ad network or ad platform compared to others. And the customer journey in a company that's B2B selling a big ticket item is much larger, and LinkedIn is usually much more involved in that customer journey in that process. So I would definitely recommend LinkedIn for a company that's focused on B2B and has a decent ticket item, meaning I like 50,000 plus, but it could be lower than that too.
We have to do LinkedIn ads because of B2B and how we're kind of going across. How do I start off my LinkedIn campaign? What are some things that I need to know? And what are some common mistakes you might see me make?
Absolutely. That's great news. That's convenient that you guys are expanding.
We try our best.
I would say a couple of things. Number one, obviously make sure that that your tracking set up. Like any ad platform, that's a given. Make sure all of your tracking set up so that if you do send traffic to your website, that if they're converting or not. A couple of things to say with LinkedIn too is you even mentioned it in your example that you're looking to help. Help is very effective to give value before someone works together. And one of the best ways to do that is a webinar. So LinkedIn is quite effective at getting your target audience onto a free webinar. And I would use, psychological factors like urgency, limited time, the whole fear of missing out, that kind of component, and fuel part of your funnel with a webinar. If you or your team are comfortable on a webinar, I really do suggest doing that. And then to leverage that as much as possible. That would be one of the go-tos for us.
What are your thoughts in general about AI and ChatGPT and other AI tools?
I mean, I think there's everyone's still exploring this together, right? And I think, the developers of it have more knowledge than a lot of people who use the AI. So the ones creating it, but even them, I think they might be blindsided by some of the capabilities. And I think that comes down to like AI regulation. And I know like Elon Musk, love him or hate him, he's a big advocate of AI regulation, and I think that is important. I think, you mentioned what someone else said earlier, which I think was really accurate, though. If you can use it as a tool, you're good. But if you can't use it as a tool, your job will be replaced. It could get more serious than that eventually. As of right now, it is a tool, right? It supports marketers in a lot of ways. We use different AI, like I mentioned to you before this call, like Blue Cap AI is something that we use to even just monitor, the clients, if they're happy, if they're not, how long we're talking, like so many different details. And these tools help us. They help us, grow. They help us retain clients. And I do see it getting to a point where it's going to have more and more responsibilities, and the human component might diminish. But I'm not at the point where I see it getting rid of what we do. The accuracy is still not perfect, but humans aren't perfect either. So, like I said, really need to blend the two things. It is a little scary in some senses, just of what is possible. But as of right now, I'm not too worried about it.
Right, and I feel like even if they do have some more progress with it, we are still like a long while away from, let's say, Skynet or anything remotely close to that. So
Yeah.
it's good. We'll just go at a slower pace, and hopefully it doesn't get to that. But from what we can do, at least from our end, how can we use some of these tools for, let's say, SEO purposes mainly? And can we use it for PPC, strategy, other areas as well?
We've used it even just thinking, what are the top, like asking the right questions, what are the top 50 search keywords in Ottawa for plumbers, or in Canada for plumbers? AI is going to spit those out. Now, the degree of accuracy is not always 100%, but in order to go manually figure all of that out, there's a substantial amount of time. So you just have to think of the right questions for AI, and AI will have a good amount of those answers. Not all of them, but it'll have a good amount of the answers. So, whether it's putting together a keyword list, asking about search volume, those are the types of things you can use it. And then, to produce the content that's necessary to go find relevant websites that you can reach out to obtain backlinks, whichever means that is, whether it's guest posting or, finding there's broken links on those websites. You can use AI to really expedite that process and in bulk give you some of those answers versus kind of manual. Yeah, I'm going to find, do some keyword. There's still a manual component, but like I said, in that like StarCraft analogy, the efficiency gains of using AI and using it right, but not being reliant on it, they're really, really big.
And do you feel that in time, at least, there'll be more and more, let's say, tools that kind of incorporate AI into it to kind of make life easier for most of us?
100%. I mean, AI is kind of like a hot topic right now. A lot of investors too are like, just the company says they have AI, I'm going to invest into it because it's going to grow, and people are buying stock shares in companies that are dealing with AI. I mean, we've used. Have you ever used Adobe's AI tool? It's crazy. We had a car dealership, like there's some crazy stuff happening, but we had a car dealership client send us a bunch of photos, and they're like really nice, like exotic cars for a car show for a charity that they run. And there's people in them, and they're like, is there any way you can take these people out? And my wife's in there, and she's just highlighting with the magic tool. I mean, there's a bit of work to it, and there's a bit of a science, and they're gone. They're gone, or we could replace those people with something completely different. Like, there's so many applications of AI. That's just with Photoshop. That's just Photoshop. And then we got, the SEO side. There's AI for paid advertising now, where you can connect AI and it will start managing some of your ads. Still takes the human component though, right? The humans have to guide it and help control it, but there's so much there.
I feel like when it comes to the SEO and digital marketing side, it kind of is a bit restricted to Chat GPT alone. And there are some other tools as well, like you mentioned, but I don't know how, let's say, mainstream some of these tools are. So if you could you give us, like, let's say, some of your top favorite tools?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a bias. I mean, I don't know if we'll get kickback from it, but we are partnered with Blue Cap AI, so I know the owners of that company personally. And they built a phenomenal tool that it can be used for sales training, it can be used just for client retention. But you include Blue Cap, or will automatically join in on calls. And Blue Cap will, it takes notes. That's just the ground of it. It takes notes, but it's picking up on so many signals simultaneously. It will identify things like, Jesse spoke for 80% of the call. And then I look at that and I go, oh, I talk too much. I need to listen more, that kind of thing. It can pick up sentiment analysis. So if they're happy, if they're sad, if they're angry, whatever it may be, it can pick up how they're feeling. If they reference a competitor name or they bring up the word pricing a lot, it can actually identify how many times they mentioned that and categorize those. So I could say, okay, I brought up our competitor, this competitor this many times, pricing this many times. These are two of the pain points that I have to deal with. So there's so much that comes out of that by having Blue Cap AI on call. So we found that to be very effective. Copy AI is a good one as well for content, kind of using the framework of ChatGPT. So Copy AI is pretty good. We've used it. It's not perfect, but it's getting better and better as AI naturally does. And we have a process to feed it the right inputs that make it somewhat unique. And then after that, we go through and our team goes through and changes some of the content up and adds the client voice and all of that to it. But that's quite an effective one as well. And then, that Adobe AI, that we've been using that, and that's very impressive. Like, to be able to say, replace this plant with another plant, and it will just swap them out, and you can't even tell the difference if it was photoshopped or not. So those are probably three of the top ones.
How do I kind of now scale my business entirely from, let's say, the B2C to B2B to now, let's say, go to different cities and basically expand? How do I grow from here?
So I would always say, like, to expand, you're never going to have long-term success if you don't have short-term success. And obviously that makes perfect sense. How can you have long-term success without short-term success? Right. But you need to look at, at least this is how we look at it with our clients. So, Mario, Luigi, we start together here. We need to have stepping stones in our relationship and our growth together to get you to here. So we have to really manage those expectations and say, okay, within 6 months, this is what we're expecting. If we hit that, we expect you to invest more to go to the next stage. And we've done this successfully with so many of our clients and taking them from a city to a province level here in Canada, provinces. So, city, province, all of Canada, then North America. So we've done that. Now, it's really about managing the client and those expectations to do it. So we start with the foundation, your website. Make sure we start right. If you have a poor website, we turn down a lot of clients because they have a really bad website, but they want SEO. It's built on GoDaddy and or it's a custom build, and it's just not enough to get us to where we want to go. We start there. We fix the website, the tracking. Then we figure out, is it SEO or paid advertising that we do, or both? If it's both, then we start with both and we start to grow. As leads come in, we start having those conversations. So I'd say, Mario, Luigi, it's 6 months together. You have a wonderful website. As you can see from our tracking, the growth is like this. You're having more and more leads, which means there's more revenue coming into the company. We want you to reinvest more of that with us, or maybe even more in ad spend. So we've scaled a lot of client ad spend. We've probably had, 7 or 8 clients in the last month or two just increase their ad spend to platforms because they're getting more leads at a lower cost per lead. So it comes down to effectively communicating that to you as the client, saying, hey, Mario, Luigi, when we started, you're getting form submissions on your website for $100 a form submission. 6 months later, it's down to $30 or $25. So now's a good time to put a little bit more in to grow, and then we can start moving into different cities. So those are the conversations that we typically have.
Thanks for the chat, Jesse. It's been great. To be honest, I didn't really know it went by that quickly.
Yeah, that was great.
Thanks for watching that episode. I hope you enjoyed. For more videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe.